Fine soldiers of the Leviathan, I address you on this day not as a captain of the ship, but as a proud father and a resident of the only place we call home. There's war. There are no negotiations. No ceasefires with this enemy. You will go in. All guns blazing.
Hello, everyone. So welcome to our webinar here today. We will be talking about 3ds Max for game development. I want to thank everybody for registering, for signing up, and for joining us here today again for the webinar. Like I said, my name is Jose Elizardo. I'm a 3ds Max technical specialist here at Autodesk. I've been with the company for about 16 years. I've been using Max for 20. So more than half my life right now, I spent, using this product that I love. So what's planned here today? So we have, a great game studio out in the UK who will be talking to us about a game they're building right now. So I want to introduce these fine folks over at Killworks, UK-based game development studio. Guys over at Killworks, Nareg and Shazad, can you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves, a little bit about what Killworks does, how did Killworks come to life? And just an elevator pitch of what the game you're working on, Signy, is all about. We don't want to steal too much of your thunder because you're going to talk all about it here today, but just give everyone in the audience a little bit of an overview of what the game is all about. Pass it over to you guys.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jose. So effectively, I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and I've been using Max for a long time. I'm a 3D artist and a director, but I've been through the whole process from the very beginning, from modeling, animation, rigging, up to cinematography and direction. So I've been through it for the past 20 years, and at the moment, for a few years back, actually, we started the Killworks with my two partners and I, Meher Kalandarian and Ellen Soma. And together, our hope was that one day we'll make a video game. And the long story short, here we are doing Signy after a while.
Shazad, do you want to do a quick little intro?
Sure. I'm Shazad. I've been 3D technical artist, and I've been freelancing for about maybe 10 to 12 years, and I'm working with Killworks for 2 years now. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for that intro. Look, honestly, I'm going to tell everyone who's attending here today, I saw the content last week. My head exploded. My eyes started bleeding. It's the beautiful stuff that they're going to show. It's beautiful stuff from the game, but it's also freaking awesome workflows they're going to show in Max. I'm really excited. A diehard Max fan, as I'm assuming a lot of you folks attending here are here today, to see Max being used in these really creative ways is really impressive. I will ask you a couple more questions based on this, what you guys are going to be covering here today. Can you guys tell us, what goes into determining, what types of tools, creative process, creative applications you're going to use for game production? Obviously, you guys built, a brand new pipeline for Killworks. Why did you ultimately settle on 3ds Max as your tool of choice for content creation? Why is Max an awesome tool for game development? And I know through talking to you guys come from the VFX background. So I'm super curious, and I'm sure everyone listening is super curious. We see that a lot, VFX artists going into games going to VFX. What does that actually look like? And what are the impacts that you guys go through? What are the challenges you guys face coming from VFX into the games industry? And how do you work through those challenges? And then, of course, we want a full unveiled curtain of the Signy game. What is it all about? How does it work? How do you guys build it? And what tools and Max did you guys use to get to the product you guys have for today? So with that, I'm going to pass over to Nareg to talk a little bit, and Shazad to talk a little bit about themselves and the game.
Sure. So regarding the choice on Max, that was an easy one for us. We're long-time Max users, However, we've used also Maya, we've used Softimage, we've used some Houdini, and all the other basically 3D applications out there. But Max, the main reason is that because we also work hands-on everything, and we wanted to make sure that even though because we're a small team, everybody needs to wear a few hats around here. But because we need to dive in and make sure that the process is, it needs to go where it needs to go, the idea is that we have to be very, very familiar with the tools that we are using. And that's one of the reasons why effectively we chose Max all the way and not mix and mash other software in between, especially when it comes to the animation process, the modeling. Modeling sometimes in and out depending on what we work with, but everything is set on Max and it's done in there 99% of the time. And that's the main pipeline in the studio at the moment. And that was just an easy choice for us based on that.
Awesome. So I guess
Shahzad,
at this point, Shahzad, do you want to add some more to that, or?
Yeah, I've been using many softwares during the years, but Max is the way it can handle big scenes, the way it can handle everything. So, and if you need something that doesn't exist, you can easily make it with MaxScript, with coding and C++ if you want to go one more level, which I will explain during this webinar. So you will see why we chose Max.
Awesome.
The details are coming up.
They're coming. I'm excited. So without further ado, let's jump in. Nareg, I believe you're up first with some of the content you wanted to show. So without further ado, I want the most of the time in this webinar to be on you guys, not on us. So please share your screen, show us your awesome stuff. I'm going to go off mute, off cam to spare some bandwidth, but I'm here. And if there's anything you guys need from me, I'm right here. I'm watching very attentively.
Thank you. Actually, it's important that Shahzad mentioned performance and viewport performance and the ability of Max to handle large scenes. That's something very, very important around here. And we'll get to why in a second. Let me just try to share here. Can you see my screen at the moment?
I can perfectly, yeah.
All right. So, okay, first, I think is a bit of a background as to what we're trying to achieve here and with the resources that we have, obviously, because yes, we have a publisher, Konami. It is a big publisher. However, we're still a very, very much a small team and an indie team. So that means that you don't have large resources, actually have very, very limited resources, and you have about 1.5 years to get the game done. And that's, we're talking about the team that started 2 people, peaked at 10 at the moment. And this is very important to keep in mind because we're going to be dealing with very, very, we have to deal with very quick turnarounds, very tight deadlines, and we need to ensure and we need to make sure that the tools we're using get the job done because there are no second chances. It's a rough industry. It's the kind of industry where it's going to grind you. You're not going to get if you're going to get second chances, that's going to come with a big cost. And that's the reality of it. So once the ink is on the paper, you're just set to go. You got the timeline, the clock is ticking, and you got to get this thing done. Now, the big question for us is we need to keep the quality going. We don't want to compromise on the game. We don't want to compromise on the visuals. And all that takes a lot of pre-planning to a degree. But again, you don't have time to pre-plan everything. So you have to just get in there and try to use the tools as best you can. Hope your experience drives it and gets to the goal and gets you to the goal that you want to achieve. So again, this is 1.5 years, very limited resources, small team. And this comes into another factor for us where we're coming in from a visual effects background in 3D animation. This helped us greatly. However, there's a big, big question mark when it comes to video games. In visual effects and 3D animation, usually when we're doing a film or production or anything like that, a visual effects shot, you've got the storyboard, you've got the color boards, you pre-plan your shot, if it works on the previs, 99% of chances is that it's going to work. It's right there. You can see it. It's from A to Z. Everything's planned out. You can see what you're doing and you can see the result on screen, except, okay, it's not refined, everything, but that's just a part of the production later on. However, in video games, you don't have that. You don't have a storyboard that's going to show you from A to Z the whole process, say, oh, that's how it's going to be. It's going to play so and so, and that's a great unknown. You can do storyboarding. You can, of course, we do all that. We do all the planning and everything else. However, there is a great unknown when it comes to how it's going to play, the troubleshooting that comes in between. There's somebody forgot a decimal point somewhere, and all of a sudden the build is no longer building. Everything is just, either you lose days, you lose hours, sometimes you lose a week. It's just a whole new ball game. It doesn't mean it's harder or easier. It just means that there's a big question mark on the unknowns. Because if the error margin in video and film or visual effects was like 15% or 10% or 20%, in video games you have to take into account 35%, up to 50% of sometimes. So it's kind of hectic over there. And couple that with the fact that we are starting up with a studio, we're building the studio, we're getting in the hardware, getting the software, building the pipeline, establishing the team, putting all this together, and creating the video game, all this in 1.5 years, which is really nothing compared to what you were trying to accomplish. Then you can see the challenges at hand. And this is where the tools come in. This is where trying to get the organization and trying to use things as cleverly as possible. So one of the key areas for us, I'm just going to dive in directly as to what we're trying to achieve in Signy and what were the key aspects for us when looking at the video game and the engine, the limitations, and so on. So the first thing that we noticed immediately when we dive into the engine, in this case is Unreal Engine 4 we're talking about. We've got we know what we need to do is we have small units on screen. We need to emphasize on the lighting. We have also very large bosses. Lighting and shadow fidelity and shading quality for us is key. And this is something I personally always insist on, to get that aspect right from the get-go and to understand what are the limitations within the engine. So one of the first things we noticed is that the lighting, the baking in the engine in Unreal Engine 4 and the way the lighting and shadows were working based on what we wanted to do and the quality that we're getting from it, again, based on time and everything else, was just not good enough. It was just, there were a lot of limitations. Again, we're also coming in, it's important to know we're coming from animation. We're familiar with video games, we're familiar with engines at the time and before, but working hands-on, it just showed that things just looked, that engine, they had this engine look. It's hard to put it, to put it on paper, but it's just, there's a feeling to it. There's the lighting sometimes, there's a cascade issues, there's shadow bias issues. Sometimes the shader doesn't look as right as you want it to look. The subsurface doesn't work really well. It's things like that. So there's the shadow and lighting for that we really wanted to address. The second thing is the numbers on screen. We're doing a shmup game, and Signy is a shoot 'em up basically. So what it is a lot of is a top-down shooter. You've got lots of enemies. When you're doing 2D, you've got 2D engines that can handle that. However, when you switch to 3D engines, especially something like Unreal Engine or Unity even out there, you run into problems when it comes to how many units you can run on screen at the same time. So we immediately noticed as soon as you put 30 or 40 AIs on screen, things just go haywire. It's just the performance drops. And we were talking about like just a bunch of 40 units on screen doing their thing and on a nav mesh and moving around. So we had to come up with ways, instances, and ways to create crowds and sort of try to get all that number on screen. Eventually, we created, the crowds on screen are in the hundreds. So that's including crowds on the ground, crowds in the air, the air units themselves. So there are 2 or 3 systems working together. And again, all this in very, very limited time. And we'll get through to that to a degree. So there are 2 types. There's a crowd-based in-engine system. This is using instance meshes, certain animations that we put in, and we deal with AI in there and everything else. However, those are more background-based. Those are certain areas where they spawn their larger numbers. And then there's a second type of crowd where we call them hero crowd groups. These are composed of 30, 40 units. And these need to do specific things. They need to be directable. They need to go to specific locations. In fact, everything needs to be directable. That's one of the hardest and most challenging things that we encountered while while making this game. So that's something we started looking into ways of doing that, and we'll get to that in a bit. Third one, we got, of course, large bosses and complex tentacles and footwork. And regarding footwork, and that goes on to across the board, we just can't stand foot sliding. You see games and you see these characters walking in video games, and all these characters. It's because it's the easiest. It's easy to do. It's very fast to do. You can just throw a character in there and just let it walk around. But you're going to get foot sliding. It's going to go up. It can't go on to rough terrain properly. You're going to get all these, not so good looking animations. It just now kind of established that that's part of a video game. If you want to make a video game, you're going to eventually get some kind of foot sliding. But we didn't want that. We couldn't afford having these creatures, especially because we're not dealing with bipeds. We're dealing with 6-legged creatures, sometimes 4-legged, 8-legged creatures. And we didn't want them to just walk on terrains and they're sliding all over. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look, the quality immediately drops on screen, regardless of what you have. At least that's my personal opinion. So we wanted to work in a nice way to get these right. And to mind you, we only have one full-time animator on board. Occasionally I jump in to help out, but that's the situation. So jumping quickly here, again, I don't want to take too much. In-engine limitations here, just quickly to touch upon a few things. One of the key things here, we wanted to build these maps for the game, and they are large maps, a few kilometers long in game sense. And we're looking at in the engine, and we find out that very quickly there are a lot of things that we won't be able to very effectively do, such as organizing the scene. Maybe, every time we put things together, we have to take into account that there's going to be some lights involved and all that stuff. So working in the engine is just, for us, was not fast enough. So we took everything out, and Signy is a unique case because we don't have instance meshes. That means we don't have one type of building where you can just throw in the engine and then have the engine light it around. No, we have every single building is unique. It's got its own thing, and the map is kind of like, it has that hand-drawn feel to it, where every model is very carefully placed based on the camera. And the top-down camera is one thing that we got going for us, because that helps us compose our images and make sure that what we're seeing and how we're directing the shots is evident there, when all these objects come together. So I know this image here doesn't look like much, but I'll show you in a bit how we sort of organize an entire map here. Sorry, I thought there was something. Anyway, so there was this whole map here essentially deals with an entire map section. And this map section, the way it is, and it looks kind of like a mess, but when we're dealing with layers and max, and we're dealing with all those aspects in terms of organizing, just the way we do for visual effects or any animation project, we're able to very effectively organize these very large scenes and put them as references in Max itself, and try to build the entire level from A to Z and compose it in Max. And this is where the viewport performance comes in that Shirzad mentioned earlier. And effectively, the layering system in Max really helped us organize our scenes very well, but especially when it comes to the lighting, because that's something that we're going to talk about in a bit. We effectively took, here's the lighting situation here. Yeah, so we're going from effectively, we wanted to go for the lighting from this to this effect. And this needs to happen for both moving objects as well as for environment objects. Because we need to deal with soft shadows, we need to deal with soft lighting in our game. That is for gameplay reasons as well as for visual reasons. Gameplay reasons because we are dealing with very, very delicate contrast in the scene, And we can't have harsh lights. We can't have all these harsh shadows all the time, but we still need to have contact shadows. We don't want to use SSAO. We don't want to use screen space post effects because that muddies the image. It's got issues with small objects. So all those kind of issues that really are out there, but they may work well for first-person shooters, maybe third-person action games, but for things like this, it was just not good enough for us. It wasn't going to work out. So we need to find a new way. We need to find it fast. And very quickly, we started doing some tests. Now, the first thing is that ray tracing is out of question. We can't do that. It's a lot of performance issues, and it's a niche kind of tech for now. We're not using Unreal Engine 5, so Lumen is not going to help us. Even if we had Unreal Engine 5, it wasn't going to help us anyway because there are some limitations there. And light baking quality in Unreal Engine 4 is still not good enough for us. It was just not going to give us the control we need. It was not going to give us that lighting fidelity that we wanted, that we're used to when doing visual effects or animation. And real-time lights, as I just mentioned earlier, had some issues, with shadow casting biases and all that stuff that comes up from it. However, the volumetric fog looks great. That's something that we can use, and it's got a very powerful material system, which is really, really great. So effectively, what we try to do is we try to break the rules, and that's I always say this to people, and especially to fellow artists, is never be afraid to break the rules. Because, for example, people talk about physical-based lighting these days. You've got PBR in games, and you have to follow these rules where you have to get this specific asset or the texture and try to put it in there, light it. Yeah, it's convenient. Yes, it gets the job done. Yes, when you have very large projects, that's great to do. However, when you want to really go for a certain look, where you really want to do something a bit different, then you have to jump in there and take some risks. And in this case, yes, we have limited time, we have limited budget and everything, and we still decided to take that risk, and it paid off, honestly, in the end. So the emphasis is put on materials, move all light baking to max, and I'll touch upon that in a bit. Use offline ray tracing to achieve the high quality lighting that we need, and then bring everything nearly unlit mode into the game and keep all that. So one of the ways we do this is, for instance, you've got this unit, because I'm going to go with a more complex example, because the environment sort of lighting is more straightforward. However, this one, for example, is a moving character, and you're looking at this from the top view. So you get a base pass, typical base pass. Of course, we have to match this one-to-one with the lighting in the levels, and we have a whole set of tools and a pipeline for that. And then we start doing our sort of key passes. And just see here, yeah. So as you can see, we put the 360 degree turning of the light all around this guy. And then what we do is we effectively create a flipbook from this. So let me just try to, yeah. So I get first I'm using all this, zoom, trying to get this. Yeah, apologies for that. There you go. Yeah. So we create a flipbook, base pass, and this one is actually a shadow pass for the foot. And we have created a system, a decal system in the engine, where it will take the effectively the height of the step of the character. For example, if the character has lifted his foot from the ground, that shadow pass on the ground, that decal, will shrink and will also fade out. That's like a kind of like a super decal approach, where you're taking into account trying to fake that soft lighting and soft shadow look. So this is an example here of how it looks like in the game. And as you can see, the shadows, they are actually the area shadows are baked in max. But however, there's something else that's going on here. The lighting, the key light, is actually a pass which you can easily control as a separate pass and control the lighting the way you need it. And when it's directly hooked up to the root and the rotation of the character, so it always stays facing the right direction. Then in this case, let's say sunlight from a certain degree. And then you've got the other bakes that are happening in the background. So you got full global illuminated character, as well as sort of like a subsurface look and everything else. All the ray traced effects that we want, we're bringing that in. So let me just, again, try to move forward. All right, here's a bit of a more complex example, and this is on moving vehicles. And if we have sometimes more complicated objects, in this case, different moving parts, we separate the parts. So the turret has its own flip book, the body has its own flip book, its own direction. So when they move independently and they walk into the shadows, that's another trick over there we had to do. We effectively created an entire level map that is a black and white map. It tells it's basically a very simple mask. Again, the compositing, just a simple compositing technique where you overlay that and you multiply it over your key light. So what happens now when the key light goes into the mask effectively cuts off the key light and it gives you the base light, which is essentially what's going to happen in the shadow. And I think I have a very quick unlit here just to show you guys how it looks like in the unlit mode. It looks lit in the unlit mode with sort of fraction of the cost, and that's the shadows working 360 all around. All baked in Max, all brought into the engine. And it looks, and some people came in and told us, well, are you using RTX and all that? Well, no, we're not using RTX. This thing is running, you know, it can run on a mobile at this stage. Of course, not the full game, but just to see. All right, so let's move in very quickly. And guys, please, Jose and somebody, just remind me if I go off time here. I don't want to delay Shirzad's.
You're doing fine. We're at 11:30 mark right now, just so you know.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Just to here again, we're using the texture baking tool. This was a very, very good addition for us in the recent Max releases, because if we didn't have this, then we would have gone in and used render to texture one at a time, which would have created some kind of Uber script to do that. But yes, thankfully this came in and we were able to bake all these environments effectively. And as you can see, this environment is fully baked in Max, and all the lighting and global illumination and everything else. However, there's also one additional thing here to note is a small technique we're using on top of everything else. That is that we're also baking in subsurface scattering, ray trace subsurface scattering, and that is has been very effective look-wise for our game. And even metal objects in our game have subsurface scattering in them, just to make it look like one of those, old-time paintings. A little bit some areas where you don't get that super sharp and super contrast feel. And it's kind of interesting to very quickly touch upon that, because if you look back at the visual effects from Star Wars and the way they used to do those models, those ship models, they're actually done with plastic. And when they lit those models in the movies, you could always tell there was something interesting going on with the light there, because that ship is supposed to be metal, but because it is that plastic, when it's lit on set like the way it does, you have this kind of like this slight subsurface scattering over these fine edges, and that's what makes it look unique back in the day. And that's something that's, again, shifting from the physical-based approach. You get this very interesting, very nice look to it. And that's one of the things that inspired us to go down this direction. One other thing that we also did effectively is when dealing, for example, an ocean surface, which we have in the game. And this is, again, the ocean surfaces in the game and engine was just not good enough. The sine waves and the way they do the procedural things, it takes a whole department on its own to do something like that in a video game engine, like, if you have Sea of Thieves and doing all this crazy ocean. But of course we don't have that. So effectively the right approach for us is, again, to use the tools we're familiar with, to use the tools we know. And this is something, again, going back to Max, using both, in this case, Houdini Ocean. There's a free script or plugin for Max. I believe it's open source. So we use that very quickly. On top of that, we used Phoenix FD greatly to enhance that ocean and then bring that in into the engine. So it seems like every time I have a video, I have to do this. Okay. And this is one of the results in the engine. This is an early test in the engine, and this is how it looks. Of course, with shader setup and everything else, and the particles are going to come over it later on. So you get the way, you know, how those vectors. This is actually a vector displacement. We baked from Max and brought it into the engine, and then run through a shader that actually looks at that vector and gives us all the details we need. And then we added normal maps for slight edge detailing in certain areas. Again, this is nearly all unlit. We are using some lighting later on, but they don't cast shadows. They don't do any of this. Even the lightning that happens in this particular level, it's all baked in. And we've got the subsurface passes as well, and as well as creating 2 different vector maps and blending between those. So you have waves that are high, you have waves that are low, and you can bend with and you can just control that in the engine real time because it's just blending between those 2, and it gives fantastic results. So just very quickly moving on. We've got the animation. Again, we're using animation here, CAT and BiPAD. BiPAD being a very old tool, but it's highly effective. And CAT, we wouldn't live without CAT in the studio doing this game because of a lot of the game design choices also were influenced by that. Our ability to be able to do multi-legged creatures that are procedural, that are able to walk on procedural terrain, and CAT became an invaluable tool for us to be able to do this. Because I've never seen a tool like that doing what it does and giving the animator the amount of control that it needs to give. Effectively, for example, in this case, this is just a biped. In this case, we're using biped on top of custom rigging. So you've got an inverse knee here, if you can see, and this is the additional rig that's set up over a biped. Sometimes the reason why we use biped is, first of all, it's very, very effective. You can blend in motion capture, you can go in and do keyframing, etc. So we're able to get quickly a motion capture run cycle and then keyframe over that, but then applied onto a custom rig. And then this is the CAT version of the same rig. So now we can bake the biped, bring it into CAT, and then CAT has more controls for animations for the animator. So all this was done in a matter of hours and maybe a day or tops or 2. That's how fast we're going in there. So if we're going to spend time and create the whole custom rig just on the smaller units, we would be completely out of time. There's something interesting here. Hero group crowds. So when this thing came up and we wanted to be able to direct group crowds and deal with 30, 40 units on screen. How do we do this? We don't have time to go in and animate 40 units, but we still want them to be directable. So I was doing some research and I said, okay, let me open up some ancient tools here, resurfacing. And for those of you old enough, I'm not that old, but for those of you old enough that would remember this, that's Character Studio Crowd from 1999, and hasn't been updated since, I don't know, two decades. And this was the same crowd system used in the Blizzard Entertainment Warcraft 3 intro cinematic. Same, again, a small team back then doing great things. Again, so immediately I set out to do a very quick test. So I put in these bunch of points moving, and we have these units on screen immediately, and it's a very nice AI, and they follow the surface and whatnot. And then I went to Shirzad, and we started having a discussion of how to take this further, because the key for us is to get those coordinates so that CAD can do its thing when we put it in there. Shirzad, on to you.
Can you see my screen now?
Everything's nice, yeah.
Okay. The assignment was clear. We needed to have multiple agents moving on an uneven surface. And the way to go was using CAT, because it does have procedural motion. And as you can see here, it's done by Scott, I think, our animator. And it's procedural. It can be scripted. We can direct everything by script. So that's why we chose CAT for this. And we wasn't able to show you the main scene because it's not released yet, and also we didn't have it in the trailer as well. So this is just a simple setup for you so you can see what I'm doing with this, and just a simple ground, few layers of noise, modifiers, and maps to build the ground. And that's it. What I have here is just a point, and this point could be simulated. This could be keyframed. It's you can do it with TypeFlow. You can do it with particle flow. You can even keyframe it. The only thing I want from my animator, from our animator, or from Narek is a bunch of points with position. That's it. And I did that part with simulation, but here it's just keyframe. And the first thing I do is I project the path onto the ground. And the way we are doing this, it's super simple. We are using ray in 3ds Max, and that ray will give me the index of the face, the hit position, and the normal of the face we are hitting by that ray. So after that, we want to know where our agent is facing. So to calculate that, I'm using velocity, and it's super simple. I'm just using the current position minus previous position and normalize that. We need to normalize everything here, because if you do not do that, you're going to have non-orthogonal matrix, which is not usable at all. And after that, here is just upward. It's basically z-axis. And I use this to blend with the head of the agent to determine how much you want the agent to, for example, lean forward on a steep surface. And the next thing that the ray gives you is this normal of the face you're hitting. So we have normal, we have velocity. The third axis is the cross product of velocity and the normal. So now we have three vectors and also the position, which is the white sphere, and that's enough to build our matrix. But there's another problem. When you zoom in, you see we have jittering effect. But this jittering, it's not that much. I'm just adding more jitter to make it more obvious to see what I'm doing here. This jitter could be solved really easily. And the way I'm doing it is I'm getting the current position, adding it to the previous position and the next position, and getting the average of both of all three of them. And this average gives me the new position that is really smooth, and you can iterate through it and do it a few times. So now we have a smooth position, but we still have that problem with rotation. So what I did was I did exactly the same. This time, instead of linear interpolation, I used quaternion interpolation, which is called SLERP. And it is, again, a built-in function in Max. It's basically adding 3 frames, current frame, next frame, previous frame, and dividing it by 3. You can weight it, actually. You can say, okay, I want 20% of previous frame, 20% of next frame, and 40, 60% of the current frame. And it gives you the average of that value here. And now what we have, it's a beautiful, nice motion without any jittering, without any problems that we can easily use to drive the cat with this node. And now the walking is just as simple as going to the cat and enable walk on path node and assign the node for it. Now it can start walk on the path that we only had one single motion for it. And now everything is done. And cat will understand the ground, but I wanted to go one step further and add my own projection for footsteps. So it's really simple. I just add another layer, select everything, all the footsteps here, bring them up to make sure it will hit when I use ray. I use ray again to find the position on the surface, and it is as accurate as it could get. So there is no foot sliding at all. There is no intersection with the foot and ground at all. So everything is as accurate as it could be. I'm just selecting the nodes, selecting the surface, and press align selected nodes to surface. So now it's walking 100% on the surface without any problems. Now this was only one node. We had too many of these nodes. And for example, in this scene, I just prepared 3 of them to make it simple. So so you can see what I'm doing. And here we have, in the same scene, we have the cat that we're using. This cat does have its own exportable bones and exportable skin. So what I'm using here to export is not cat itself. We have another layer. It's a free script, actually. I released it for free. You can use it if you want. You just give it the cat and the skin of it, and just press one click, and it gives you the exportable layer and skin and bones. Now let's see what we should do. The steps are really simple. We need to select the cat, add motion layer to the cat, pick the reference point, set walk on path mode, set to animation mode, select exportable nodes, and select export selected to FBX. But there is another problem. And the problem is I have to do that for 200 times, which is not something I want to do by hand. So again, I wrote a code for it. It's really simple. In the first line, I'm giving the path to the project files. In the line 3, we are defining the points, which is a selection set, and it contains only the points. No matter if it's 1 point, 10 points, or thousands of points, doesn't matter. It's just a selection set. We can define it and feed it to the script. It's like a pseudo script, but it works actually. It's a working script. And in line 5, I'm defining the selection set for the export, which contains the skin and the bones. And after that, the cat is going to be cat node. Here I'm just setting the parameters and setting we need for FBX, because we need animation, we need bake animation, and we need resample animation. And that's it, you only do it once. And here I'm just looping through all the points and append the layer of cat motion layer. And then because we are looping through the points, the item is the current item we are looping through it. So current item will be the path node. And after that, we just need to say, okay, go to the walk mode 2. Walk mode 2 is, means walk on path mode. And after that, cat mode will be 1. 1 is animation mode. So now it's enabled. And what I'm doing is just select the export layers, export nodes, which is a layer and also an selection set here. And then export selected with the path, with extra subfolder, with the name of the point, and then extension of FBX. No prompt, because I don't want every time 200 times to press OK on FBX dialog. I just pressed no prompt here and selected only and using FBX. The only thing I'm doing now is to remove the current layer, because current layer is using the current point. So I'm removing that, and it's a loop. It will start on the next node and do all of these things again. So instead of me doing it 200 times, this script probably took me around 5 minutes to write, and then we can just run it. But I wanted to go one more step again, and instead of running it in the max, because we had 200, I believe it was 250. So it was a big scene, and it wasn't only 10, for example, 100 frames. We had thousands of frames. It was 3,000, I guess. So it's a big number, and we wanted to run it and then go sleep. And then after, we just wanted to see the result. So here, what I have here is the max file, which I showed you, the batch export script that we wrote, and export data. It's a subfolder to export everything here. There is a feature in Max that I believe not everyone knows. It's called 3ds Max Batch. 3ds Max Batch is basically 3ds Max without interface. So you can run the codes, you can use all the functionalities of Max without running Max. So it's lovely for me as a developer. So I'm just navigating through that path of 3ds Max, run 3ds Max Batch, and give the script we just wrote. And then that argument is just to define, okay, I want to debug everything for me. And now I just wait. It will start 3ds Max without seeing 3ds Max. It's running in background, and the result will be exported in the folder that I have opened here. Those are 3 points.
Cool.
And one of the things I want to show you is this tentacle. For Scarab, it's one of the bosses in our game. We had 8 of these, and it needs to be functional for our animator, because we needed to be able to move it, to be able to grab into something, and also bring everything as it is in Max in Game Engine, which was something that we thought, okay, it's easy, but it wasn't. So I will explain why in a bit. I'm just I'm just preparing a pose for it so we can see the whole rig. All of the controllers do have IK and FK, so the animator can decide if he wants to go with IK or FK, and also there is a blend option between that. Even for the claws, we have that, and just to understand the scale of all the rigs and objects we're using, I'm zooming here to see even if in this claw that is really small, we have arms, and those arms have fingers. So it's really complex rig, but considering we have 8 of these only for one of our bosses, so it's kind of a big rig. And also there is something else. I want to be able to grab into something. So here I'm just creating a sphere so you can see how it works. And there is a custom script. All of these features I'm showing you, all of them are made with Max script. It's a lovely tool in Max that when you learn how to use it, you can't live without it. Here you can enable that. It's grabbing that sphere and everything works well. You can also go and tell, okay, I want that function only for 10 frames. After that, again, link to your parent. And that's it. And after that, we have a custom reset transform because we didn't want 3ds Max to change our controllers. There's a reset transform when you change the tentacle, you want to be able to go to your rest pose. So there's a button to do that. And also the hardest problem, we thought everything is okay. Now we are ready to export it to Unreal, but we were not ready when we saw the result in Unreal, we were shocked actually. And I can go there and show you what was the problem. And this is what you get when you bring that directly into Unreal. So, and the reason is in Max, you can stretch bones, but in Unreal, you can't stretch bones. So we wanted to have that trick that we are having extra bone, and that extra bone is getting the stretch value of the bone in Max and converts it to a scale. So scale is something that Unreal can understand, but stretch is not. So we converted that using this bake script. So after having our animation, I just go to the controller and the custom script and start baking. It will bake everything into the new rig that you can see in the origin. And that does a few things. For example, the first thing you notice is that the origin stays the same because we want to be able to grab it and place it in placeholders in the game. And also it's always facing forward. So the position, transform, everything is relative. And when you do that and you go to the game engine, you will see 100% accurate result. And it's exactly the same as what we had in Max. So this is what we did to be able to export everything to Unreal. And since I'm not sure if we have time or not, because we don't, I just quickly explain these. These are some in-house tools. We are just creating them to make our lives easier. For example, this one just debugs the scene without doing anything. You just grab everything and start debugging. It will tell you what's wrong and you can go and fix it. And this is one of them. And this is Posture. It's a great, this one, the scene I'm using, it's a great free rig, Americano, I guess it was the name. And you can use it. This Posture gonna be free thanks to Killworks. We are releasing it for free. So this is a tool, great tool for you. It will work like animation studio library in Maya. So it will store poses and animations and everything. This one is only for creating legs. You just define where you want the legs to be and then creates them. And the last thing, tentacles. Because we had too many tentacles, this one is just to create tentacles. and that's it.
Thank you so much, Razad. Thank you so much, Nareg. Honestly, if we had 2 hours, we could go on for two. I would love to have more time with you guys because Christ, my head was exploding watching. I saw sneak peeks of this last week, and now I'm just like I want more. So look, we have about 6 minutes left. I'm going to ask you guys to start looking at the Q&A while I start doing the polling so that we can get to those answers to those questions in the last few minutes. But I will launch the last couple of polls and then we'll do the Q&A, and I think that'll bring us to our top of the hour. All right, so launching a poll in 3, 2, 1. What new features are you using in Max? These are some of the newer features that have gone into the latest development of 3ds Max. Retopo, texture baking. We saw the folks over at Keelworks are using heavily texture baking. I've been promoting the heck out of it. I think it's a great tool. It's modern. It's, it does everything you need to do, and it's really in line with everything else that's out there. The Boolean stuff that we just shipped with the volume Booleans, crazy stuff, and all of our new PBR work we've done over the last couple of years, PBR shaders, PBR viewports, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll, share those results. And Retopo, I'm happy to see you guys loving Retopo because, man, that tool is something else. And texture being kind of in line with what I think. New Booleans just came out and viewport stuff. Not everyone needs the viewport to look good, but yeah, if you want it, it's there. Let's go back. Poll number 3, launch this. What platforms are you guys seeing? Did I launch this? No. Launch. Hold on, back. A poll. Is a poll currently ongoing?
Yes.
No.
It's still
it is. Okay. Yeah. So this is around some of the systems in Max. We saw Cat today. We saw MaxScript. We saw Biped. We saw Tyflow. We heard about Tyflow. So these are some of the systems we saw here today. There's a heavy usage of MaxScript to create custom tools. Cat. I mean, I knew Cat was awesome, but to see Cat being used the way it was used over terrains and just following the ground, all the raycasting you're doing, man, sure that's like crazy stuff. Cool. I'm going to end the poll now and share those results. So you guys see a nice mix of all these different systems. Hopefully everyone today got a good idea of what Max can do for you. I'm sure a lot of you are using Max already in production, and Max has been there for a long time, but it's here to stay. And Max is I call it the Swiss Army knife of 3D. It can do so many things and caters to a lot of different audiences. And it's no different from the games industry. Okay, so I'm going to end this poll. We're going to jump to Q&A. And I'm going to let you guys answer some of those questions. There's quite a few. I have 8 questions. I can stick around for a few more minutes if you guys can't get through those questions, and poll and close out the polling. All right, so you guys want to get to some of those questions? It's balls in your court now.
Yeah, I think a few of them are related to me, and I answered one of them. It's from Hagen Tellus. I think Narek should answer to that later because it's about Nanite, which I'm sure we didn't use because we used Unreal 4. So, okay.
So, what did you bake your vector displacement with? You guys mentioned that.
Yeah, I think I can go with that. Well, there were two ways we did that. One of them was V-Ray has a geo to vector baker. There you can pick the geometry and it will bake there. But there's another way using Scanline, I believe, if I remember correctly. It was a year ago when I did this. So I believe it was a Scanline. So I used those 2 methods. You have to put the plane correctly over the ocean, so the surface or the forming surface. You have to make sure that the distance is correct before you do that. Vector displacement is very delicate when it comes to distances, as well as making sure that it's compatible with Unreal, because Unreal's RGB and the way it does it shifts a vector. It's not straight out of the box. You can't just bake it and just throw it in there, expect it to work. There's quite a bit of math that needs to go through inside the material shader. I think this is available online someplace. You can dig it up, but try to look for vector displacement online and then try to dig that up and try to make it work, because there's some incompatibility issues there when it comes to baking versus seeing the results in Unreal.
Cool.
Did you save time for you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Did it save time for you guys by doing all the baking inside Max? Yes and no. It's approximately more or less the same, but I think baking was faster with faster results, in a sense that you have to be careful. There's no going back. If you miss a beat, you're going to spend a few hours baking again. So you better know what you want from the start. But the results were worth it. So that's what we always give ourselves, 1 or 2 chances in case a bake didn't work. But because we're doing in passes, you've got all the compositing going on for you, so that should be fine. You've got always something to fall back to. You mentioned using CAT as a primary tool for rigging animation. Are there any features that are not present in the tool currently that would be helpful for the work you are doing? Yes, please, making the UI better, at least a floatable UI for CAT. That'll be a great help. At the moment, we are just taking a magnifying glass and trying to look into those layers, things like that. Those are like more of quality of life. Enhancements would do fine. There's an issue with an inverse foot. I think that would be great to have for CAT out of the box. Shirzad, if you have anything, please jump in.
Yes.
If you see anything, it's yours.
Someone asked, what's the tool you mentioned? It's Posture. It's for storing positions and figure different poses. Doesn't matter if it's hand, face, everything. You can store hundreds of them, and you can have collections as well. And it does have selection sets, and it does have support for animation as well. So when we are done with the current project Signy and we have some free time, we will release that as well. And the name is Posture. There is Posture, old version of Posture online. You can use that. It's working well, but it's not giving you preview or animation. It's just for positions. You can use that. Another question from Henry: would you recommend learning MaxScript or Python? I would definitely recommend MaxScript first, because to learn Python, to be able to work with Python, you need to understand MaxScript, because there were 2 APIs for Python. One of them was Max Plus, which is discontinued now. So you have to stick with PyMax. And for that, it's basically calling MaxScript through Python. So you definitely need to understand MaxScript first. And there are still some areas that MaxScript does it much better than Python. And exactly the opposite, some areas Python does it much better, because you have too many libraries, you have beautiful UIs. You can have the same in MaxScript as well. So first start with MaxScript, then you can go with Python as well. Both of them are great. And that's why I'm looking for others.
Can we get to the first?
From Pascal?
Yeah, Pascal Labillois. I'm really curious about your answer to this, because I have my opinions, but I want you guys to.
Since you come from a visual effects background, is 3D Max used in film? If so, in what capacity did you use it? Yes, I have used it. What capacity? To a great capacity. I know Maya takes sometimes the forefront headlights on this one, and spotlight, I mean. But in this case, Max is always there's a working horse at the back, and that's Max, I can assure you. In the studios at ILM and the studios everywhere, they always use Max. And don't forget, you're looking at places like Blizzard Entertainment, Blur Studios. All those guys were at least purely Max based, and now they're mixing, they mixed other tools in between. But don't forget to get back to all those great cinematics. To this day, they're made by Max, and there's a reason for that. It's a great tool for small studios. Small teams, not necessarily small studios. And a lot of these departments, even in working at ILM, they are small teams, and they're usually generalists. Generalists love Max because you're able to, it's like a Swiss Army knife. It's the old saying, Swiss Army knife, but it is really true. It's not just the saying that it is Swiss Army. It is true. You can get a lot more done. And I'm just saying this from my experience personally. I've worked in Max both. And the stuff that I can do in Max, not necessarily because I know better the tools I'm using, but just because it's just the way it works. It just feels natural, at least to me. And you can get more done with it.
We have like 1 more minute. I think we're 4 past. I don't mind going too much, but I don't want to go too far, because people have other jobs, work to do.
Yeah.
So maybe 1 more question. If you want to just pick the question you want to answer, there's a lot of questions today. I think, by the way, if we don't get to your question, we will answer them after the fact. I believe these are all recorded in Zoom. If not, just, you got emails from us, so you can send your questions to those emails. They come directly to me and the team, so we can get those to Killwork, get some answers and send them back to you. But if you guys have to answer 1 more question, I see something here about Anonymous attendee, which engine is better, Unity or Unreal for VR? The animation tools can blend animation. Do you guys want to answer that or something else?
Yeah, I mean, and both are good engines, but Unreal has something going on for it, and that at least for artists and for that's the blueprints, no question about it. Blueprints and the material editor alone in Unreal for me and for us in general here, I don't think we would have been, doing what we do without those, because we could jump in and do some programming ourselves and scripting and whatnot, and not, again, working small team, you need to wear a lot of hats.
Cool. We have somebody who raised his hand, their hand, Keith Jarrett. I think I'm going to allow you to ask your question. I'm going to allow you to talk, which unmute you, I think, if you want to go ahead and ask your question. I saw you raised your hand. I want to give you an opportunity also, Keith, if you want to unmute yours. Can I unmute, ask to unmute? If not, we can just keep going. If you're not there anymore, we can just keep going to some of the questions. Let me one more. I see David Almeida. I know him. To Keelworks, what would you like to see developed in Max to make more easier, faster, better?
And definitely animation layer first, and then user interface. Two main things. One of them, better user interface, because Max loves to hide its power, and you can't know it's there until somehow you can find that it's just by, if you're lucky, you can find, okay, there's a great tool in Max. Better UI, and then interface, it's my opinion. Better UI, animation layers.
So anyone from the product team that is currently here, which I know there's a few I saw, please take note. Anyways, we're going to share this transcript back to you guys. Any of this feedback back to the development team. I will say one last thing, Pascal. I'm French Canadian, so I can pronounce French names properly the way they're meant to be pronounced. That being said, we're going to close it out now. We've taken enough of you guys' time over at Keelworks. We super appreciate this freaking webinar. I hope we do more of these, and I hope we do more together, because honestly, this was really, really inspiring. That being said, I'm going to thank everyone who joined the webinar. I hope you guys all found value here. I hope and I'll see a lot of thumbs up and hearts and clapping signs, which is a really good sign.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And with that, I guess I'm going to close the webinar.